Mr. Machado, maybe you and Mr. Ray can tell me. This is the fourth presentation we've had of progress and recommendations on the Delta Plan. The last one was in December. Tell me the order in which you want to discuss the whole thing, because we focused, I think all of us focused on the 38 recommendations as what you were actually urging us to include. I don't want to obscure the rest, but I like to know the order of progression here.
I would like to make a brief comment as to the use of the ESP, and then comment on the National Heritage Area designation and the Delta Investment Fund, how that would be implemented, and then turn it over to Dr. Michael, who will go through the ESP. And we've given parts of the ESP to the Council over a period of time from last September through now. What we have before us today is the final ESP, which was adopted in January 26 by the Commission, which incorporated the comments of the peer review panel, which was done in collaboration between the Commission and the Council. And we'd like to get through the presentation and then spend some time discussing the proposals, and in particular those that are deemed to be inconsistent, to talk about consistency and feasibility.
Okay, I know we're going to start with National Heritage Area and then the Delta Investment Fund, or whatever in the
Yes.
it's called. Am I not correct that those are contained within the Economic Sustainability Report recommendation? I understand you have to do a different work product, but
they're referenced within the ESP, but in terms of the proposals, there's a little more specificity with respect to both of those. The ESP, it creates an economic sustainability plan, and it has recommendations that the Commission is obligated by the legislation to implement. It comes before the Council for a finding of consistencies. The proposals is what we are required to give to the Council for consideration and incorporation into the Delta Plan. It draws from the ESP. The ESP is the reference document for that. And in addition, the other two components to the proposals is the feasibility study for the National Heritage Area and the proposal to implement the Delta Investment Fund. And so what we have is that the ESP looks at the economic drivers, establishes the baseline, it explores the possibility as well as the challenges for meeting the charge of enhancing recreation, agriculture, the cultural values of the Delta. And I think one of the things that's probably important to note that what it talks about is that often policies regarding utilization of Delta resources and public safety are often looked at from the perspective of minimizing state liability and maximizing state assets versus looking at the economy, environment, and the well-being of the people in the Delta as well as the state. And I think the ESP discusses this dichotomy in terms of the choices that have to be made. It also takes a look at what was available in terms of proposals for the Delta and looks at how those might impact the economic sustainability, not in terms of direct confrontation as to the proposal so much as to address this type of proposal could create this type of magnitude, which sets up, I believe, a policy decision as to the implementation of proposals into the Delta in terms of how that may or may not impact economic sustainability in terms of the definition of within the Act, as well as taking a look at it from a statewide perspective to the statewide economy. The Natural Heritage Area, that feasibility study has been completed. As Dan has said, the National Park Service has offered to do a review for completeness. We expect that to be done in the end of this month, and then it will go before the Commission for consideration. The Natural Heritage Area becomes designated by Congress. The National Park Service becomes a partner to it, and it allows the area to receive federal funds if made available, so long as there's a match at the local level. The National Heritage does not assume ownership of land inside heritage areas or impose land use controls, and that's oftentimes gets clouded in the discussion of the National Heritage Area as a proposal for the Delta amongst the locals. But basically what you get out of it is a range. You can get something as simple as putting signage up and directing people to the Delta as a place, to actually working with locals, stakeholders in developing development plans to be able to emphasize the cultural assets of the area, the historical assets of the area, to look at trying to invest in maintaining that. The biggest problem the Delta has, everybody knows that it's a place to go, but once you get there, there's no place to go. And that's the paradox that we face, because there isn't the infrastructure to support visitation to a degree that one would expect to be expanded. And then the ESP will talk about some prospects for how you can further enhance the appeal of the Delta for a broader spectrum of visitation and utilization, much in line with what was being proposed, which has been proposed by the state parks in their plan that they sent, that they did earlier this year and submitted to the Commission for consideration. But we expect to be able to forward the feasibility study this spring to Congress for consideration. The Delta Investment Fund was set up by the Delta Reform Act, but it was not funded. It's allowed to receive funds from the federal, state, local, and private resources. The proposal is for the Commission to administer the fund, to be advised by an investment committee composed of representatives of the 4 state agencies that sit as members of the Commission, as well as 1 member from the constituency of each of the remaining Commission members. And the investment fund, if funds were made available, can support the NHA as a source of matching funds, as well as be used to implement the economic sustainability plan. I believe both the NHA and the Delta Investment Fund are feasible, and they are consistent with the request of the Act going forward. With that, if there's no questions, I'll turn it over to Dr. Michaels to get to the meat of it, which is the ESP.
Don.
Yeah,